August 19th, 1965. 7 assassins, 20 bullets. Bumpy Johnson collapsed on a Harlem street, bleeding from wounds that should have killed him instantly. But 6 hours later, the FBI closed his file with a single note, too dangerous to approach. What did a dying man do in those 6 hours that terrified the most powerful agency in America? To understand how it all led here, we go back to where it truly began. On the evening of Thursday, August 19th, 1965, at precisely 11:30 at night, Bumpy Johnson pushed through the heavy wooden doors of Small's Paradise nightclub on East 135th Street in Harlem. The music hit him first. Jazz. Live. A saxophone wailing through cigarette smoke thick enough to cut with a knife. The crowd inside was celebrating something, celebrating nothing. Just another Thursday night in the only place in America where black people could drink, dance, and dream without looking over their shoulders every 5 seconds. Bumpy was 61 years old, 6 feet tall, lean, still moved like a man half his age. Tonight he wore a dark blue suit, custom-tailored, white shirt buttoned to the collar, no tie. Diamond cufflinks caught the light as he adjusted his jacket. Gold watch on his left wrist. Expensive. Everything about Bumpy Johnson broadcast one message: success. For 30 years, he had ruled Harlem's underworld with an iron fist wrapped in velvet, not through violence alone, though he could be violent when necessary, not through fear, though plenty of people feared him, through intelligence, through strategy, through an understanding of power that most men never grasp in their entire lives. He controlled the numbers rackets, the gambling operations, the heroin distribution network that stretched from 110th Street all the way up to the Bronx, and the Italian mafia families, the Genovese, the Gambino, the Lucchese. They all paid tribute to Bumpy Johnson for the privilege of doing business in his territory. That arrangement had held for 2 decades. Bumpy controlled Harlem. The Italians controlled everything else. Nobody crossed those lines. Nobody broke the rules. Money flowed. Everyone stayed rich. Everyone stayed alive. But tonight, something felt wrong. Bumpy couldn't identify what exactly. Just a feeling. An itch at the back of his mind that 40 years of survival had taught him never to ignore. He paused inside the entrance. Let his eyes sweep the room. The bartenders were familiar. The waitresses he recognized. The musicians on stage had been playing Smalls for 5 years. The patrons were regulars. Nothing out of place. Nothing obviously threatening. Yet the feeling persisted. He had come tonight to finalize a distribution deal with 3 heroin suppliers from Philadelphia. 50 kilos monthly starting in September. That translated to an additional $1 million in yearly revenue. Excellent business. The kind of business that required celebration. But Bumpy never celebrated until the money was actually in hand. Counted. Verified. And safely deposited in one of his 7 offshore accounts. The meeting had gone smoothly. All parties reached agreement on terms. Cash would change hands next week. Just another routine transaction for someone who had dominated this particular game for 3 decades. Bumpy shook hands with the Philadelphia men, exchanged pleasantries, promised to be in touch. Then he made his way back through the crowd toward the exit. 11:43 at night. Time to go home. What Bumpy Johnson had absolutely no way of knowing, despite possessing street instincts that had become the stuff of legend across 5 boroughs, was that the trap had already been set. 6 weeks earlier, in a private dining room at Patsy's Italian restaurant on West 56th Street in Manhattan. 3 men had gathered to discuss murder. Tommy Ryan Eboli sat at the head of the table, acting boss of the Genovese crime family since Vito Genovese entered federal prison in 1959. 48 years old, ambitious, hungry, tired of waiting for real power. Next to him sat Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, 44 years old, captain in the Genovese family, ran gambling and loan sharking operations throughout East Harlem and the Bronx, made millions every year, wanted to make tens of millions, and across from them both, Vincent the Chin Gigante, 37 years old, rising star within the organization, would eventually become one of the most powerful mob bosses in American history. But tonight, he was just another soldier with big dreams and bigger ambitions. They had been planning this meeting for months. Secret, off the books, no commission approval, no family consultation. Just three men who believed they saw an opportunity that everyone else was too blind or too cautious to seize. Tommy Ebele lit a cigar, took a long pull, exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. We've been paying that black bastard 15% of our Harlem earnings for 20 years. 20 years. You know how much money that is? 40 million, Fat Tony answered immediately. $40 million paid to one man for the privilege of operating in territory we should own outright. Vincent Gigante said nothing, just listened, learning, calculating. Ebele continued. The old guard, Costello, Vito. They made deals with Bumpy back in the 40s when we needed his connections, his protection, his understanding of how Harlem worked. Fine. That made sense then. But it's 1965 now. Times have changed. Bumpy's 61 years old. He's slowing down, getting soft, and we're still paying him like he's some kind of king. So what are you proposing? Gigante asked quietly. Ebele leaned forward. I'm proposing we take what's ours. Harlem is the most profitable narcotics market in the entire United States. We should control it, not pay tribute to some aging gangster who happened to get there first. Fat Tony nodded slowly. Agreed. But Bumpy's got an army. 200 men. Maybe more. If we go to war with him, it gets bloody. Federal heat comes down. Nobody makes money. Everyone loses. Which is why we don't go to war, Ebele said. We remove the head. The body dies on its own. No Bumpy. No organization. His lieutenants will fight amongst themselves for 6 months. Tear the whole operation apart from the inside. We wait. We watch. Then we move in and take over what's left. Clean. Simple. Profitable. Gigante smiled. Cold. You're talking about assassination. I'm talking about business, Ebele corrected. Smart business. They spent the next 4 hours planning every detail. The target, the timing, the method, the aftermath. By the time the meeting ended at 2 in the morning, they had made their decision. Bumpy Johnson would die. And it would happen soon. But they needed specialists for this particular job. Bumpy wasn't some low-level dealer who could be taken out by any street thug with a gun and a grudge. This required precision. Military precision. That realization led them to seek out 7 men whose expertise lay in exactly this type of work. The first 2 came from Detroit. Brothers, both Korean War veterans, both trained in special operations, both with 5 confirmed contract kills to their names. They commanded $50,000 each. The third and fourth came from Chicago. Different backgrounds, same skill set. One had been a Marine sniper, the other Army intelligence. Both understood tactical coordination, crossfire positions, escape routes, $50,000 each. The final 3 came from Philadelphia. Specialists in urban assassination, knew how to move through cities like ghosts, how to vanish into crowds, how to leave no evidence behind. $50,000 each. 7 men, $350,000 total. An astronomical sum in 1965, equivalent to nearly $3 million in today's currency. But Tommy Ebele didn't hesitate. This was an investment. The return would be measured in tens of millions over the next decade, cheap at twice the price. The 7 assassins arrived in New York on July 8th. They rented separate apartments in different boroughs, never met in public, communicated through encrypted messages left in predetermined drop locations, professional, careful, invisible. For 6 complete weeks, they studied Bumpy Johnson, learned his patterns, his routines, his security measures. What they discovered was that Bumpy was extremely difficult to kill. He never drove the same route twice, never kept a predictable schedule, always traveled with at least 2 bodyguards, sometimes 4, changed cars frequently, varied his daily activities in completely random ways. The man understood operational security better than most intelligence operatives. But everyone has a weakness. Everyone has one moment of predictability, one crack in the armor. The assassins found it on week 3 of their surveillance, every Thursday evening, without fail. Bumpy attended business meetings at Small's Paradise nightclub on 135th Street. His arrival time consistently fell between 10 and 10:30 at night. He invariably stayed for 1 to 2 hours, and he always parked his car on East 132nd Street, 2 full blocks away from the club, because he refused to trust valet parking services. That walk from Small's Paradise back to his vehicle, 2 blocks, approximately 3 minutes of travel time through relatively empty streets late at night. That represented the only consistent, predictable element in Bumpy Johnson's entire weekly schedule. That narrow window was their opportunity. That was when they would strike. They planned the ambush with military precision. 3 vehicles positioned at strategic points along 132nd Street. First vehicle stationed at the intersection of 132nd and Lenox Avenue. Second vehicle positioned mid-block. Third vehicle waiting at the corner of 132nd and 7th Avenue. 7 shooters distributed among the 3 cars. Each assassin assigned a designated zone of fire to guarantee complete coverage and eliminate any possibility of escape. The plan was straightforward yet devastatingly effective. Wait for Bumpy to exit Small's Paradise and begin his walk toward his car. Allow him to reach the halfway point down the block, away from potential witnesses, into the darkest section of 132nd Street, where the streetlights had been deliberately broken 2 nights earlier. Then simultaneously, all 7 shooters would exit their vehicles and open fire from 3 different angles. Crossfire, overwhelming firepower, 0 chance of escape, 0 chance of survival. Bumpy would be dead before his weapon cleared its holster. The shooters would return to their vehicles and disappear into the night. Police would eventually find his body. The investigation would lead nowhere. Case would go cold. Perfect execution. Thursday, August 19th, 1965. The night had finally arrived. The moment Bumpy Johnson stepped out of Small's Paradise at 11:43 at night. 3 drivers in 3 separate vehicles turned their ignition keys. 7 men checked their weapons one final time. 42 rounds loaded and ready. Hearts beating steady. Breathing controlled. This was it. This was the moment 6 weeks of planning came down to 8 seconds of violence. But there was one element the assassins had failed to account for in all their meticulous preparation. One variable they didn't know existed. Marcus Webb sat in a dark blue Chevrolet Bel Air parked on 135th Street, 2 blocks west of Small's Paradise. He had been waiting there for 90 minutes, waiting and watching. Marcus was Bumpy's top lieutenant, his right hand, his most trusted associate. And every Thursday night, without Bumpy's knowledge, Marcus followed his boss from Small's Paradise to ensure he made it home safely. Standard security procedure. Bumpy didn't know about it because Bumpy would have told Marcus not to bother, that he could take care of himself, that he didn't need a babysitter. So Marcus never mentioned it, just did his job quietly, professionally. invisibly. Tonight, Marcus saw Bumpy exit the club right on schedule, watched him turn south onto 132nd Street, started his engine, prepared to follow at a discreet distance. Everything normal, everything routine. Meanwhile, Bumpy walked at his usual measured pace down 132nd Street toward where his car waited. A 1964 Cadillac Eldorado, black, immaculate. Bumpy maintained his possessions with great care. The hour was late, the streets mostly empty. A few people stood outside a bar, half a block distant. A couple walked their dog on the opposite sidewalk. Normal sounds of a Harlem night, music drifting up from basement clubs, distant traffic humming in the background. Bumpy appeared relaxed but remained alert. Always alert. 40 years in this particular life had taught him never to let his guard down completely. His eyes constantly swept the street, searching for threats, for anomalies, for anything that seemed out of place. He was halfway down the block when his instinct suddenly screamed a warning so loud it was almost physical. Danger. Close. Immediate. Bumpy slowed his pace, not stopping, just reducing speed while his mind processed what his subconscious had already detected. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. His eyes found them a moment later. 3 vehicles parked along 132nd Street that had no business being there at this hour. A Chevrolet Impala at the near corner, a Ford Galaxy mid-block, a Plymouth Fury at the far corner, all with engines running, all containing multiple occupants sitting motionless in the darkness. This wasn't normal. This was a setup. Bumpy's hand moved toward his waistband, toward the Colt M1911. A .145 caliber automatic he carried every waking moment of his life. This weapon had been with him for 20 years, had taken 14 lives. Tonight it might need to claim more. But even as his fingers touched the grip, he knew he was too late. The car doors were already opening, 7 men emerging simultaneously from 3 different positions, all holding pistols, all weapons aimed directly at him. Bumpy drew his gun. The motion was fast, smooth, born from 40 years of constant practice. But 7 against 1 represented impossible odds. Even Bumpy Johnson couldn't prevail against those numbers. The shooting erupted at exactly 11:46 at night. All 7 men fired at once. The noise was absolutely deafening. Massive. Like a war zone condensed into 8 seconds of pure chaos. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like camera bulbs. 42 shots discharged in rapid succession. The sound echoed off brick buildings, rolled down empty streets, shattered windows 3 blocks away. Bumpy managed to return fire. Got off 3 rounds before the incoming bullets began finding him. His first shot struck one assassin in the shoulder, spun the man around, sent him crashing against a parked car. His second shot caught another in the leg, dropped him to one knee. His third shot went wide, missed completely. Then the world exploded into pain. The first bullet hit Bumpy's chest, left side, just below the collarbone. The impact felt like being struck by a sledgehammer swung at full force. The kinetic energy spun his body halfway around. The second round caught his right shoulder, shattered the clavicle completely, sent bone fragments tearing through muscle tissue. The third tore through his left arm, clean through and through in the bicep. The fourth struck his right arm, fractured the humerus. Bumpy dropped to one knee, could no longer maintain his stance. His gun wavered, but he kept firing, kept fighting, because that's what Bumpy Johnson did. He fought. The 5th bullet slammed into his left thigh, shattered the femur. The 6th hit his right calf, fractured the tibia. Both legs compromised. He fell backward, landed hard on the pavement, still shooting. The 7th round penetrated his abdomen, center mass, potentially fatal. The 8th caught his back near the kidney region as he was falling, The 9th punched through his chest again. Right side this time, collapsed his lung. The 10th found his left shoulder. The 11th grazed his neck, opened an artery, sent blood spraying in a crimson arc. The 12th hit his back again, lower spine area. The 13th caught his right side, cracked ribs. The 14th, 15th, and 16th struck his legs again, pulverizing muscle, shattering bone. The 17th penetrated his abdomen a second time. The 18th caught his left arm again. The 19th hit his chest. The 20th and final bullet struck his back one last time. 20 gunshot wounds total. Bumpy lay on the cold pavement, blood everywhere, pouring from everywhere. His gun had fallen from his hand. Empty. Useless. He remained conscious but fading rapidly. His vision tunneled. His hearing became muted. Everything felt distant, disconnected, unreal. The thought crossed his mind clearly, precisely. This is it. This is how it ends. 61 years of life. 40 years running Harlem. It all concludes here on 132nd Street. Bleeding out, dying, alone. The 7 shooters were already moving back toward their vehicles. Mission accomplished in their assessment. Target down. Multiple confirmed hits. He's either dead or dying. Either way, their job is complete. They climbed into their cars. Doors slammed. Engines revved. 3 vehicles departing in different directions. Dispersing. Professional. Clean execution. Bumpy lay there alone. Bleeding. Dying. No one approached. The few people who had heard the gunfire chose to stay inside. Out of sight. Invisible. This was Harlem. The sound of gunshots meant stay away. Don't involve yourself. Don't become a witness. You survive by remaining invisible. 30 seconds passed. To Bumpy. It felt like 30 minutes. His consciousness continued slipping away. He was losing blood at an alarming rate. Perhaps half his total volume already drained away. His heart raced frantically, trying to compensate, trying desperately to keep him alive. But it wasn't enough. Medical fact: 20 gunshot wounds, massive hemorrhaging, no immediate intervention. Probability of survival approached 0. This was death. He recognized it, had seen it enough times to know what it looked like from the inside. His eyes began to close, the darkness rushing in from all sides, ready to take him, ready to finish what 20 bullets had started. But then, suddenly, tires screeched, a car door flew open, footsteps running, fast, getting closer. Marcus Webb had seen everything, had watched from 2 blocks away as the trap closed, had seen the muzzle flashes, heard the gunfire, witnessed Bumpy go down. And the moment the shooters drove away, Marcus floored the accelerator, covered 2 blocks in 5 seconds, slammed on the brakes, and jumped out running. He dropped to his knees beside Bumpy, saw the blood, saw the wounds. Too many. Too much. Jesus Christ. Stay with me, Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled panic. Just stay with me. Bumpy, don't you dare die on me. He yanked out a handkerchief, pressed it against the worst wound, the abdominal shot, trying to slow the bleeding, trying desperately to buy time. With his other hand, he pulled out one of those new car phones, expensive technology, essential for exactly this type of emergency. He dialed a number he had memorized 2 years ago, a number Bumpy had given him with strict instructions. If anything ever happens to me, you call this number first, before the hospital, before the police, before anyone else. You call this number, and you do exactly what he tells you. The phone rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Calm. Professional. This is Dr. Robinson. But what Marcus Webb didn't know, what the 7 assassins couldn't possibly have known, was that this moment, this exact scenario, had been planned for, prepared for, rehearsed in Bumpy Johnson's mind 1,000 times over the past 2 years. Because Bumpy Johnson understood something that his enemies never grasped. In this business, survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the most ruthless. Survival was about preparation, about contingency plans, about making sure that even if they managed to put you down, you had already arranged for what came next. Dr. Robinson, this is Marcus Webb. Bumpy's been hit. Multiple gunshots. 20 at least. He's bleeding out fast. I'm on 132nd between Lenox and 7th. I need you here now. There was a pause. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then Dr. Samuel Robinson's voice came back. Absolutely steady. Completely focused. Not the hospital. You bring him to me. Can he survive transport? Marcus looked down at Bumpy. 20 holes in his body. Blood pooling on the pavement. Consciousness fading. He won't make it to any hospital. You need to come to him. No, Robinson said firmly. Too exposed. Too many witnesses. Police will be there in minutes. You get him into your car right now. Keep pressure on the worst wounds and keep him conscious and talk to him constantly. Do not let him slip away. I'll meet you at my office in the Bronx. I can be there in 8 minutes. That's impossible. It's a 15-minute drive from your place. Then I'll make it in 7. Move. Now. The line went dead. Marcus shoved the phone back in his pocket, grabbed Bumpy under the arms, started dragging him toward the Chevrolet. Bumpy's eyes flickered open. Marcus, I've got you. Stay with me. We're getting you help. How bad? Bad. Real bad. But you're going to be fine. Just don't talk. Save your strength. Marcus got Bumpy into the back seat of the Chevrolet, laid him across the bench, pressed both hands against the abdominal wounds where the bleeding was worst. Then he climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove. Fast. Running red lights, swerving around late-night traffic. Every bump in the road sent fresh blood pouring from Bumpy's wounds. Every turn made him groan in pain. Talk to me, Bumpy. Stay awake. Tell me about the meeting tonight. How did it go? Bumpy's voice came out weak. Thready. Good. Philadelphia deal. 50 kilos monthly. That's excellent. That's real good money. You did good tonight. Except for the part where I got shot 20 times. Okay. Marcus almost laughed, despite everything. Even dying. Bumpy Johnson kept his sense of humor. Yeah, except for that part. The drive to the Bronx normally took 18 minutes. Marcus made it in 11. He pulled up outside a nondescript 3-story building on East 149th Street at exactly 11:15 at night. 13 minutes since the shooting. 13 minutes that felt like 13 hours. Dr. Samuel Robinson was already waiting outside. 75 years old. Gray hair, thick glasses, hands that trembled slightly under normal circumstances from age and too much coffee. But tonight those hands were absolutely steady as he pulled open the back door of the Chevrolet and began his assessment. 20 gunshot wounds, massive blood loss, estimated 60% of total volume already gone, punctured lung, possible liver damage, arterial bleeding from the neck, shattered bones in both arms and both legs, spinal trauma, multiple entry and exit wounds creating a network of internal bleeding that was probably catastrophic. Survival probability, 0%. Robinson had been practicing medicine for 52 years, had seen everything. Knife wounds, gunshot wounds, burns, explosions, industrial accidents, gang violence. He had pulled hundreds of people back from the edge of death, but he had never, in his entire career, seen anyone survive 20 gunshot wounds. It was medically impossible. The human body simply couldn't sustain that level of trauma and continue functioning. Yet Bumpy Johnson was still breathing, still conscious, still alive. "Can you save him?" Marcus asked. Robinson looked up, met Marcus's eyes through those thick glasses. "I don't know, but I'm going to try. Help me get him inside." Together they lifted Bumpy out of the car, carried him through a back entrance, down a hallway, into a room that looked nothing like a normal medical office. This was an operating theater, unofficial, off the books, designed for treating people who couldn't risk going to hospitals. Gunshot wounds, stab wounds, injuries that would trigger mandatory police reports. Robinson had been running this facility for 30 years, had saved hundreds of lives here. Criminals, mostly. Gang members, enforcers, people who lived violent lives and needed somewhere to go when that violence caught up with them. He didn't judge, didn't ask questions, just practiced medicine the way he had been trained to practice it. Save lives. All lives. No exceptions. But tonight was different. Tonight he wasn't just saving another patient. He was attempting to preserve a legend. Because if Bumpy Johnson died, Harlem would erupt into war, chaos. Hundreds would die fighting over his territory. The delicate balance that had kept the peace for 2 decades would shatter completely. Robinson couldn't allow that to happen. They got Bumpy onto the operating table. Robinson cut away his clothing with surgical scissors, exposing all 20 wounds. The sight was worse than he had imagined. Entry wounds on the chest, abdomen, arms, legs, shoulders, back, neck, some with exit wounds, some with bullets still lodged inside. Blood everywhere, pooling on the table, dripping onto the floor. "Marcus, I need blood. O negative if possible. Otherwise universal donor. I need at least 6 pints, maybe 8. Start making calls. Get donors here immediately." Marcus pulled out his phone, started dialing. Within 20 minutes, 8 men arrived, all members of Bumpy's crew, all willing to donate blood without a moment's hesitation, all understanding exactly what was at stake. Robinson established transfusions, set up IV lines, administered morphine for the pain, though probably not enough given the extent of the injuries. Then he began the surgery. Extracting bullets was delicate work under the best circumstances. With proper lighting, proper equipment, proper assistance, this was far from ideal. The lighting was adequate but not excellent. His equipment was good but not hospital grade. His only assistant was Marcus, who had no medical training whatsoever. But Robinson had performed miracles in worse conditions during World War II. He had operated in field hospitals under artillery bombardment with nothing but a flashlight and a bottle of whiskey for anesthesia. This was luxury by comparison. He started with the most life-threatening wounds first. The abdominal shots. 2 bullets had penetrated the abdomen. 1 had struck the liver, causing massive internal bleeding. Not immediately fatal, but extremely serious. Robinson clamped off blood vessels, sutured torn tissue, extracted the bullet fragment. Slow, methodical, perfect precision despite his age. The second abdominal bullet had missed all major organs by sheer luck, passed clean through without hitting anything vital. Still caused significant bleeding, but manageable. Next came the chest wounds. 3 bullets had entered the thoracic cavity. 1 had collapsed Bumpy's right lung. Robinson inserted a chest tube, re-inflated the lung, extracted the bullet from the pleural space. The other 2 chest wounds had miraculously missed the heart and major blood vessels. More luck. More impossible good fortune. The neck wound was the most terrifying. The bullet had grazed the carotid artery, not severed it, not even significantly damaged it, just grazed it by perhaps 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters difference between survival and instant death. Robinson sutured the arterial wall, stopped the bleeding, moved on. The arm and leg wounds were painful, certainly, but not immediately life-threatening. Shattered bones, torn muscle, nerve damage that would probably never fully heal, but survivable. Robinson extracted bullets, set bones as best he could, sutured entry and exit wounds. The back wounds concerned him. 3 bullets had struck Bumpy's back. 2 had lodged in muscle tissue. 1 had come dangerously close to the spinal column. Potential paralysis, potential permanent disability. But again, not immediately fatal. Robinson worked for 6 hours without stopping, without resting, without even pausing to drink water. His hands remained absolutely steady. His focus never wavered, because he understood that one mistake, one moment of inattention, one slip of the scalpel would kill Bumpy Johnson as surely as those 20 bullets should have. Marcus stood nearby, handing instruments, holding retractors, mopping blood, doing whatever Robinson needed, watching the master surgeon at work, watching him perform what could only be described as a medical miracle. By 6 in the morning on Friday, August 20th, Bumpy's vital signs had stabilized, blood pressure rising, pulse steadying, breathing becoming regular. Still unconscious, but alive, against all odds, against all medical probability. Alive. Robinson finally stepped back from the operating table, exhausted, utterly drained, his shirt soaked with sweat and blood, his hands now beginning to tremble from fatigue and adrenaline crash. "He'll live," Robinson said quietly. "Probably. The next 24 hours are critical, if infection doesn't set in, if his body can handle the trauma. He'll survive. He's strong, tougher than anyone I've ever treated in my entire career. 20 gunshot wounds should have killed him, would have killed literally anyone else. But somehow, impossibly, he's alive." Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Thank you, Doctor. Thank you." Robinson waved off the gratitude. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of danger. I need to monitor him constantly. You should go home. Get some rest. There's nothing more you can do here." "I'm staying," Marcus said firmly. "Until he wakes up, I'm staying right here." Robinson didn't argue, just nodded. Understood. At exactly 6:47 in the morning, Bumpy Johnson's eyes opened. Slow at first, confused, disoriented, then focusing, awareness returning. He saw Robinson, saw Marcus, saw the ceiling of an operating room he vaguely recognized from previous visits years ago. His throat was dry. His entire body screamed in pain despite the morphine. But his mind was clear, sharp, functioning. "How long?" His voice came out as a rasp. 7 hours since you were shot," Robinson answered. "You've been in surgery for 6. You're stable now, but you absolutely must rest. No movement, no stress whatsoever. You lost massive amounts of blood. Your body needs time to recover." Bumpy tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his chest, his abdomen, his back, every nerve ending firing at once. He gasped, fell back against the table. "Don't move," Robinson said sharply. "You have 20 gunshot wounds, shattered bones, torn muscles, nerve damage. You're lucky to be breathing. Don't push it." Bumpy ignored him. "Who shot me?" Marcus stepped forward. 7 shooters, professional hit, coordinated ambush. I got witness descriptions. I have vehicle information. I'm tracking them down right now." "How long to find them?" "I already found them. All 7. They're at a hotel in Queens, Galaxy Motor Inn, waiting for their payment from the Genovese family. Tommy Eboli ordered the hit. I have confirmation." Bumpy's eyes hardened, something cold and terrible settling into his expression. "Get me a phone," Robinson moved to block him. You can't. You need to rest. Your body has been through catastrophic trauma. You can't just get me a phone, Bumpy repeated. Not loud, not angry, just absolute certainty. The voice of a man who had commanded armies, controlled empires, survived 40 years in the deadliest business on earth. The voice that did not accept no for an answer. Robinson sighed, knew better than to argue. Brought a phone. Plugged it in, handed the receiver to Bumpy. Despite the pain, despite the weakness, despite the fact that he should be dead, Bumpy Johnson began making calls. The first call went to Jerome Patterson, logistics coordinator for Bumpy's organization, the man who made things happen, who turned orders into action. Jerome, this is Bumpy. I was shot last night by 7 professionals hired by the Genovese family. I survived. Now I need you to mobilize everyone. I want all 7 shooters dead by noon today. Can you do it? Jerome didn't hesitate. Didn't express surprise that Bumpy was alive. Didn't ask questions. Just answered. Consider it done. How are you holding up? I'm alive. That's all that matters. 6 hours. Jerome, 7 dead shooters by noon. Go. Bumpy hung up. Made the second call. Paul Williams, security chief, the man who handled intelligence, surveillance, enforcement. Paul, I need you to send a message to every FBI agent currently investigating me or the Genovese family. Tell them what happened last night. Tell them I was ambushed. Tell them I survived. Tell them all 7 shooters will be dead before lunch. And tell them to stay out of my way. If they interfere, they'll regret it. Paul's voice came back calm. Professional. Understood. Message will be delivered within the hour. Third call. Vincent Drake, weapons specialist, the artist who understood that violence, when properly applied, could send messages more powerful than any words. Vincent, I need you to prepare a display, public, visible. I want the bodies of all 7 shooters arranged somewhere the FBI and NYPD cannot possibly ignore, somewhere that sends an unmistakable message. Figure it out. Make it memorable. Vincent chuckled darkly. I know exactly where. Consider it done. Bumpy hung up the phone, looked at Robinson. How long before I can walk? Robinson stared at him incredulously. Weeks, maybe months. You have 20 gunshot wounds, nerve damage, muscle damage, bone fractures. You shouldn't even be conscious right now, much less thinking about walking. I need to walk today, within 6 hours. Give me whatever drugs are necessary. I don't care about long-term damage. I need function right now. That's insane. The drugs required would. Will they let me walk? Robinson hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, but you'll pay for it later. Permanent damage, addiction, possible organ failure. Later doesn't matter, Bumpy said quietly. Now matters. Do it. Robinson prepared the injections, amphetamines, morphine, cortisone, adrenaline, a chemical cocktail that would kill most people outright. He injected Bumpy carefully, watching his vital signs, ready to intervene if the drugs caused cardiac arrest. But they didn't. Bumpy's eyes began to clear. His breathing steadied. The drugs were working, masking the pain, forcing functionality, artificial strength, borrowed time. But enough. While Bumpy prepared himself to stand, to walk, to personally deliver justice, his organization had already sprung into action across the city. At 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday, August 20th, Jerome Patterson's crew successfully located all 7 shooters exactly where Marcus had said they would be. Galaxy Motor Inn in Queens, room 237. All together, celebrating, drinking cheap whiskey, laughing, thinking they had succeeded. thinking Bumpy Johnson was dead, thinking they would collect their final payment in a few hours and disappear forever into new lives, with new identities in cities far from New York. They were catastrophically wrong about all of it. Jerome brought 20 men, professionals, armed, coordinated. They surrounded the hotel completely, blocked all exits, covered every possible escape route. Then they entered through the back entrance, climbed the stairs to the second floor, moved silently down the hallway to room 237. Jerome knocked 3 times, firm but not aggressive. "Room service," he called out. One of the shooters opened the door without thinking, saw Jerome, saw the 20 guns pointed at him, tried to slam the door shut. Too late. Jerome's men rushed inside. Overwhelming force. The 7 assassins reached for their weapons. Useless. They were outnumbered, outgunned, captured in less than 30 seconds. Jerome pulled out his phone, dialed Bumpy's number. "We have all 7. What do you want done?" Bumpy's voice came through weak but absolutely clear. "Kill them. All 7. Same way they tried to kill me. 20 shots each. I want symmetry. I want justice. Then display the bodies somewhere public. Somewhere the FBI will find them. Somewhere they'll understand what happens when you shoot Bumpy Johnson." "Understood." Jerome hung up, looked at his crew. "You heard the man. 20 shots each. Make it clean. Professional. The message needs to be crystal clear." They executed all 7 shooters in that hotel room. 20 bullets per man. 140 shots total. Mathematical precision. Perfect symmetry. Each assassin receiving exactly what they had delivered. Then they loaded the bodies into 3 vans, drove to Federal Plaza in Lower Manhattan, the FBI's New York field office. And there, on the front steps of the building where federal agents would arrive for work in 2 hours, they arranged all 7 bodies in a seated position, propped against the wall. Almost casual, like they were waiting to go inside. Each body displayed 20 bullet wounds. Each body had a note pinned to the chest. "They shot Bumpy Johnson 20 times. This is what happens next. BJ." When FBI agents began arriving at Federal Plaza at 9:30 in the morning, they found 7 corpses waiting for them, all shot multiple times, all with notes referencing Bumpy Johnson. The scene caused immediate chaos. Agents called NYPD, called their supervisors, called Washington. This wasn't just murder. This was a message, a threat, a demonstration of raw power. Someone had just dumped 7 bodies on the FBI's doorstep as a warning. Special Agent Michael Morrison was assigned to investigate. He had been tracking Bumpy Johnson for 3 years, knew his methods, knew his style. This was classic Bumpy. Professional, precise, sending a message that could not be misunderstood. Morrison examined the bodies carefully, counted the wounds, 20 shots each, 140 bullets total. Then he made a call to New York Hospital, checking emergency room admissions from the previous night. No Bumpy Johnson, no gunshot victims matching his description. Morrison's blood ran cold, which meant either Bumpy had died and his crew was retaliating, or Bumpy had survived 20 gunshot wounds and was orchestrating this response himself. Morrison called his supervisor. "Sir, we have a situation." But while the FBI processed what had happened at Federal Plaza, the second phase of Bumpy's retribution was already underway. Tommy Aboli, Fastu Fat Tony Salerno, and Vincent Gigante had all gone into hiding the moment they learned the assassination had failed. Separate locations, maximum security, thinking they were safe, thinking Bumpy wouldn't be able to find them, thinking they had time to figure out their next move. They were wrong. Paul Williams's intelligence network was extensive, comprehensive, built over 30 years. He had informants in every borough, eyes and ears everywhere. By 10 in the morning, he had located all three men. Tommy Eberly was hiding in a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn, protected by 6 bodyguards. Fat Tony was in a safe house in Staten Island with 8 men. Vincent Gigante had fled to a cousin's apartment in Queens with 4 soldiers. Paul sent 3 teams, simultaneous operations, overwhelming force. By noon, all 3 targets had been captured. Not killed, captured, brought to a specific location. Because Bumpy Johnson had very specific plans for these 3 men, the location was an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And when Tommy Eberly, Fat Tony Salerno, and Vincent Gigante were dragged through the doors at exactly 2 in the afternoon, they found Bumpy Johnson waiting for them, standing, barely, supported by Marcus on one side and Jerome on the other. 20 gunshot wounds less than 15 hours old. Should be dead. Should be in a hospital bed unconscious. Should be anywhere but here. But here he was, standing, looking each of them directly in the eyes. Tommy, Tony, Vincent. Bumpy's voice was quiet, controlled. You ordered a hit on me. 7 shooters. 20 bullets hit their mark. You thought I'd die. You were wrong. Now you pay. Tommy Eberly tried to speak. Bumpy, listen. Bumpy raised one hand. Silence. Then he nodded to Marcus. Marcus raised his pistol. 3 shots. Quick. Clean. Headshots. All 3 men dead before they hit the concrete floor. Dispose of the bodies separately, Bumpy said calmly. I want them found in 3 different states. I want the Genovese family to know their leadership disappeared because they came after me. I want them terrified. The bodies disappeared within the hour. Tommy Eberly found in New Jersey 2 days later. Fat Tony in Pennsylvania. Vincent in Connecticut. All clearly executed. All sending the same message. The Genovese family had tried to kill Bumpy Johnson. Their leadership had died instead. It was exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 hours since Bumpy had woken from surgery. The ledger was complete. 7 shooters dead, 3 Genovese captains dead, FBI investigation about to be closed. 1 phone call remained, and at precisely that moment, as if the universe itself was writing the script, Bumpy's phone rang. Part 3. Bumpy picked up the phone on the second ring, his hand steady despite everything his body had endured in the past 18 hours. On the other end of the line came a voice he recognized immediately. Philip Benny Squint Lombardo, acting boss of the Genovese crime family. Bumpy, it's Lombardo. I'm calling from JFK. I need you to understand something. I had nothing to do with what happened to you last night. Nothing. That was Eberly, Salerno, and Gigante. They acted without family approval, without commission approval. They went rogue. Bumpy said nothing, just listened. Let the silence stretch. Let Lombardo sweat. I know they're dead now, Lombardo continued, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. I accept that. I'm not retaliating. I'm not seeking revenge. I don't want war with you. Nobody wants war with you. You've made your point. You survived 20 shots and eliminated everyone responsible in 6 hours. Message received, loud and clear. Still, Bumpy remained silent. The most powerful response was often no response at all. I'm leaving New York, Lombardo said finally. Going to Sicily. Retiring. Permanently. The Genovese family is withdrawing from any operations that might conflict with yours. We're done. This is over. You won. Finally. Bumpy spoke. Just 7 words. Quiet. Calm. Absolute. Don't ever come back. Stay gone. Understood. This conversation never happened. We never had problems. You have my word. The line went dead. Bumpy handed the phone back to Marcus. The war that could have consumed Harlem for years had ended in a single phone call. Not because of threats, not because of violence, because Philip Lombardo understood a fundamental truth. You cannot fight a man who refuses to die. You cannot defeat someone who turns 20 gunshot wounds into a declaration of absolute power. The Italian mafia withdrew completely from Harlem that day. The arrangement that had existed for 20 years, the tribute, the cooperation, all of it ended. Not because Bumpy demanded it, because they were too terrified to remain. While Bumpy was accepting surrender from the Genovese family, Special Agent Michael Morrison sat in his office at Federal Plaza, writing the most difficult memo of his career. 7 bodies discovered on FBI steps. 140 bullet wounds total. All connected to Bumpy Johnson. All executed with military precision. All delivered as a message that could not be ignored. Morrison had been investigating organized crime for 20 years, had taken down powerful families, had sent dozens of criminals to federal prison. But this was different. This wasn't just another gangster. This was someone who had survived an assassination attempt that should have been absolutely fatal. Then orchestrated a response so swift and comprehensive that it paralyzed one of the 5 families. He picked up his phone, called his supervisor in Washington. "Sir, I'm recommending we close the investigation on Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson permanently." "Explain." "He was ambushed last night. 7 professional assassins, 20 confirmed hits. He survived. Then in less than 6 hours, he retaliated with overwhelming force. All 7 shooters dead. 3 Genovese captains eliminated. The acting boss has fled the country. And Johnson dumped 7 bodies on our doorstep as a warning." Silence on the other end. Then, "What are you saying, Agent Morrison?" "I'm saying he's too dangerous, too powerful, too connected. If we continue investigating him, we're putting agents at risk. He just demonstrated that he can survive what should be impossible and destroy everyone responsible before we can even open a case file. I recommend surveillance only. No direct engagement, no prosecution attempts. We watch him from a distance and we don't interfere." More silence. Morrison could hear his supervisor breathing, thinking, calculating. Finally, "Agreed. Close the file. Make a note in the record. Subject is too dangerous for direct investigation. Recommend avoiding all contact." Morrison hung up, typed the memo, filed it. The FBI's investigation of Bumpy Johnson officially ended that afternoon. Not because they couldn't build a case, because they were afraid of what would happen if they tried. The memo would remain in classified archives for decades, a testament to the only criminal in American history who made the Federal Bureau of Investigation back down completely. The weeks following that night became months. The months became years. Bumpy Johnson recovered slowly from his wounds. The nerve damage in his legs never fully healed. He walked with a noticeable limp for the rest of his life. The back wounds caused chronic pain that woke him most nights. The lung damage reduced his stamina. He could no longer climb stairs without stopping to catch his breath. But he lived. He thrived. He continued ruling Harlem with the same intelligence, the same strategic brilliance, the same absolute authority that had defined his 30-year reign. Nobody challenged him. Nobody dared. The story of August 19th had spread through the underworld like wildfire. Bumpy Johnson shot 20 times, survived, killed everyone responsible in 6 hours, made the FBI retreat, made the mafia surrender. The legend grew with each retelling. Some versions claimed he had been shot 30 times. Some said he had killed the assassins himself while bleeding out on the pavement. Some insisted he had never been shot at all, that the whole thing was an elaborate setup to eliminate his enemies. But the truth was extraordinary enough without embellishment. On July 7th, 1968, 3 years after that night on 132nd Street, Bumpy Johnson died of a heart attack at Wells Restaurant in Harlem. He was 62 years old, died the way he had lived, surrounded by his people, in his territory, on his terms, not from bullets, not from violence, not from enemies. Just time finally catching up with a man who had cheated death more times than anyone could count. His funeral drew thousands. People lined the streets of Harlem to pay respects, to witness the passing of an era, to acknowledge that something irreplaceable had been lost. Not just a gangster, not just a criminal, a symbol, a representation of power that came not from violence but from intelligence, from preparation, from understanding that survival required thinking 10 moves ahead while everyone else was still planning their first. The story of August 19th. 1965 became legend. Parents told it to children. Old-timers recounted it in bars and barber shops. New generations heard it and struggled to believe it could be true. 20 gunshot wounds, 6 hours, complete victory. It sounded impossible. It sounded like mythology. But the FBI memo remained in the archives. The police reports documented 7 bodies. The hospital records from Dr. Robinson's office showed the impossible surgery. The witnesses remembered. The evidence proved it all happened exactly as described. The lesson embedded in that night resonated far beyond Harlem, far beyond organized crime. It spoke to something fundamental about power, about resilience, about the difference between strength and invincibility. True power doesn't come from being the biggest or the strongest or the most ruthless. It comes from being the smartest. From preparing for contingencies nobody else considers. From understanding that survival isn't about avoiding damage, it's about what you do after the damage is done. 20 bullets didn't kill Bumpy Johnson because Bumpy Johnson had prepared for the possibility of 20 bullets, had established protocols, had trained his people, had built systems that functioned even when he was bleeding out on a sidewalk. That preparation, that foresight, that absolute refusal to leave anything to chance. That was the real source of his power. The 7 assassins who shot him that night made a fundamental miscalculation. They assumed that putting enough bullets into a man would be enough. They didn't understand that you cannot kill an idea by shooting the person who embodies it. You cannot destroy a legacy by eliminating its creator. Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a man. He was a system, a philosophy, a demonstration that intelligence properly applied could overcome any obstacle, survive any attack, defeat any enemy. Years later, a young reporter researching the story tracked down one of the FBI agents who had been present when those 7 bodies were discovered at Federal Plaza. The agent, retired now, living in Florida, agreed to speak on condition of anonymity. "What did you think when you saw those bodies?" the reporter asked. The agent was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I thought this is what happens when you try to kill God and he doesn't die. This is the wrath that follows resurrection." We closed that investigation because we understood something very clearly. Bumpy Johnson had just demonstrated that the rules didn't apply to him, that normal law enforcement methods were inadequate, that he existed in a category all his own. You don't investigate someone like that. You don't prosecute them. You acknowledge their existence, and you stay out of their way. "But he was a criminal," the reporter pressed. "He sold drugs, ran illegal operations, killed people." "Yes," the agent agreed. "He was all those things. But he was also proof that conventional approaches to power, conventional understanding of what's possible, conventional assumptions about how the world works, all of that can be wrong. The FBI had resources, legal authority, the full power of the federal government. Bumpy Johnson had a network, intelligence, and absolute refusal to accept limitations. On August 20th, 1965, we learned which one was more powerful. We learned and we backed away, not because we were weak, because we weren't stupid. The story ends where it began, on a street in Harlem, with a man who should have died but didn't, with 20 bullets that failed to accomplish their purpose, with 6 hours that changed the landscape of organized crime forever. The message carved into those 6 hours remains clear. Absolute. Undeniable. They shot Bumpy Johnson 20 times. 6 hours later. They wished they hadn't.